Welcome students, welcome back to the concluding part of the chapter Forensic Psychiatry. In today's topic about the mental disorder and responsibility of mentally ill person. What is responsibility? Responsibility means liability, that is state of being legally responsible for something. The law fixes responsibility for certain acts being done which may be considered as against the law, and such acts, if committed by a sane person, shall be punished by the laws of the land. So that is responsibility. Responsibility means liability or state of being legally responsible for certain acts done which are against the law or contrary to the law. So that is what. So if certain acts or omissions are against the law, then such persons are liable to be punished. But the law presumes that every person is of mentally sound in nature until the contrary is proved. That means that law assumes or presumes that each and every person is of a sound mind and he is capable of making a sound judgment. So law presumes that until otherwise the contrary is proved. That means the person who has done certain acts has done under the diseases of mind or suffering from the disease of mind, then only the law accepts for him to have not done such particular act. Section 328 to Section 339 of the Criminal Procedure Code deals with provisions as to the accused persons of unsound mind, including fitness to stand trial and subsequent court procedures. Law considers the state of mind only at the time of alleged offence or the act and not in general. For example, the person has committed an offence 2 days back, and at that time what was his state of mind, only the law considers the state of mind of that particular person 2 days back, not in general, not what he is at this present moment. So the law considers the state of mind of a particular person only at the time of alleged offence or an act and not in general. So the mental status of responsibility at the time of alleged offence has to be determined. So coming to the responsibility of a mentally ill person. The responsibility of a mentally ill person are of two types. One is the civil responsibility and the other one is criminal responsibility. In civil responsibility, we have following responsibilities of a mentally ill person, that is management of property and affairs, mental illness and contract, mental illness and marriage contract, the competency of a mentally ill person to stand as a witness in court of law, consent and mental illness and testamentary capacity. These are the various civil responsibility of a mentally ill person. Coming to the first one, that is management of property and affairs of a mentally ill person. In this case, a relative or a friend of an alleged mentally ill person writes an application to the court of law stating that his friend or a relative is suffering from certain mental diseases and he is not able to manage his property and affairs. So after receiving the application, the court orders inquiry whether such person is of unsound mind and not able to manage his property and affairs. And if the doctor's certificate proves that the person is incapable of managing the property and affairs but not dangerous to himself or others, then the court appoints a manager to look after his property with necessary powers given to the manager. Further, The court may also order for the sale or disposal of a property of that mentally ill person for the payment of debts or expenses incurred during his treatment, or any other debts he might have having from, or borrowed a loan from somebody else. To clear off those debts, the court may order for the sale or disposal of the property of that particular mentally ill person. The court will also order a second inquiry whether the unsoundness of mind of that mentally ill person has stopped, and if the doctor's certificate proves that the mental illness or the unsoundness of mind of that particular person has stopped, then if the court is satisfied, then all further proceedings will be stopped in that particular case. That is, the appointment of the manager will stand as cancelled, and he himself, the mentally ill person, will be given full authority as a normal person to manage his own property and affairs. Then what is the doctor's roles in management of property and affairs of a mentally ill person? The doctor's role is to give certificate stating that unsoundness of mind is of such a degree as to make him incapable of managing the property and affairs after careful examination and proper laboratory investigations. If the doctor is in doubt whether the person is actually suffering from mental illness or not, then the doctor would be advised to be on a safer side to give opinion in favor of sanity. That means to state that the person is a sane person and is not suffering from any unsoundness of mind or mental illness. Second civil responsibility of a mentally ill person is with respect to mental illness and contract. So contract is an agreement between two parties. So for any execution of any work, the contract should be a valid one. But the contract becomes an invalid one signed between two parties if either of the party at the time of making it was incapable of understanding what he was doing due to mental illness. So two parties, one party, if he is suffering from mental illness and he enters into a contract with another person on such particular business, then such contract becomes invalid. A contract becomes a valid one if one of the party can show that at the time of making the contract he did not know that the other party was mentally ill, and the contract made was a fair contract keeping in mind about the witness and other aspects. Further, the mental illness which develops after the contract has been done does not make it invalid. That means the contract which was signed before one of the party suffers a mental illness or unsoundness of mind after entering into a contract, then such contracts is a valid one, and mental illness of one person developing after the contract was signed does not make the contract an invalid one. Mentally ill person is also responsible to pay the bills for simple necessities of his life. That is, if he orders any food, or if he is staying in a rented home, or pay the bills for the clothing that he purchases, or any expenses towards medical care, he will be responsible. But the mentally ill person is not responsible if the order made by him is grossly expensive, or in other words, the seller takes advantage of his mental illness and produces a very expensive bill to him. In such case, the mental ill person is not responsible to pay such kind of a grossly expensive bill. So the borderline or the standing point is the mentally ill person can make a contract when he is in lucid interval, that is sound mind. Mental illness and marriage contract. This is a quite common one where you might have seen in various movies and various TV serials. Marriage becomes an invalid one if at the time of marriage either of the party, either the boy or the girl, is incapable of giving a valid consent to marriage due to unsoundness of mind or mental illness. The second one would be, though the boy or the girl is capable of giving valid consent, but he's been suffering from such a degree of mental illness as to be unfit for marriage and procreation. The third point would be, he has been suffering from recurrent attacks of mental illness or epilepsy. If these three conditions are satisfied, then the marriage contract that is entered between a boy and girl becomes an invalid, and the court considers such marriage as null and void. Then the other civil responsibility would be the competency of a mentally ill to stand as a witness in a court of law. Section 118 of the Indian Evidence Act, here IEA stands for Indian Evidence Act, says that a mentally ill person is not competent or not incompetent to testify unless he is prevented by his mental illness from understanding the questions put to him and giving rational answers to them. So section 118 of the Indian Evidence Act states that a mentally ill person is competent enough to testify in the court of law, provided he understands the questions put to him and he is able to give a rational answers to them, and though he is suffering from a mental illness, and that mental illness does not prevent him from understanding the questions put to him and giving rational answers to them. For example, a person suffers from delusion due to a mental illness, but is able to tell what he has seen and what he understood, and he also understands the obligation of an oath and is competent to give evidence. That means a mentally ill person is competent to give evidence during the period of lucid interval. Consent and mental illness. Consent is once again an giving a permission for any particular procedures likewise. So it is given by a sane person. So a consent becomes an invalid one if the person who gives consent by reason of disease of mind is unable to understand the nature and consequence of the act to which he consents. In simple words, if a mentally ill person gives any type of consent and because of his mental illness he will not be able to understand the nature and consequence of the act to which he gives consent, and such consent becomes an invalid one. Examples are a mentally ill person giving consent for a surgical operation, or a mentally ill person giving consent for a sexual act, or mentally ill person taking part in dangerous games like boxing or any other games wherein there is inherent risk involved in that particular game. So giving consent for such games becomes an invalid one. Mental illness and testamentary capacity is another civil responsibility of a mentally ill person. Here testamentary capacity means the mental ability of a person to make a valid will. So the requirements for a valid will are the following three, like a valid will is one which is written and properly signed and witnessed document. There is a testator who is a major and is of a sound mind, and there should be no force, no undue influences which have been applied, and if these three conditions are satisfied, basic requirements, then the will becomes a valid one. So there is a special type of will that is called as a holograph will, is one which is written by the testator in his own handwriting. So holograph will is one which is written by the testator in his own handwriting. So what is the role of a doctor in execution of a will? Doctors are sometimes called as witness in execution of a will. So the doctor needs to attend to as a witness in execution of a will. He need to do the physical examination, mental state examination of the sick person or who is going to make a will, and also order for necessity lab investigations. The testator should be tested to say that he is of a sound mind, and that testing is done by asking few of the following questions. The doctor should ask the testator about his relatives, their number, degree of contact with their relatives, his friends, his properties, etc. Few of these questions can be asked to know about the general background of the testator. Then you can test the testator by for his awareness with regards to the time, place, date, etc. And also ask the testator about the details of his property, how much property he owns, whether it is in the same place or it is in other places, and how he is going to distribute the property. And if you find that the testator is giving a large chunk of his property to one particular person, and if you consider that it is an unjust distribution of the property, then in particular ask about such unjust distribution of the property and the reason for that. The doctor can also test the patient's power of concentration by simple arithmetic sums, addition, subtraction, etc. And the next one would be more important, wherein the doctor will ask all other persons in the room to leave or go outside, and ask the testator if there is any undue influence or force in writing the will. The doctor is also required to exclude any other diseases, or the testator is under the influence of any drug or intoxication or any mental illness affecting his decision making power. Most important or a common symptom for absence of legal capacity to make a valid will is the impairment of the memory. In old age or any disease of the mind, if there is any impairment of memory where the person is not able to remember about his property or about his relatives or his friends, then such gross impairment of memory will be the most common symptom for absence of legal capacity to make a valid will. If there is gross impairment of the memory of that particular person, then such person should not be allowed to make a will. The doctor must be fully satisfied, and his main aim is to determine that the testator is of a sound mind and he is understanding about the disposal of his property among his relatives. Coming to the next responsibility of a mentally ill person, that is criminal responsibility. Till now we talked about the civil responsibility. This one is about the criminal responsibility. In criminal responsibility, a person may plead mental illness in the court of law. He says to the judge that he is suffering from mental illness in order to avoid conviction if the accused was of unsound mind when alleged crime was committed, or he does not want to undergo the trial of the court and he pleads mental illness, and or there could be another reason such as to avoid capital punishment, that is death sentence, he pleads mental illness. So among these following conditions the person may plead mental illness. The court considers that a person is unfit to plead or under disability to a charge of crime when he suffers from mental illness and is not able to understand the proceedings of the court. The court considers a person to be unfit to plead or under disability to a charge of crime that is made upon him when he suffers from mental illness and is unable to understand the proceedings of the court. If the unsoundness of the mind of a particular person is proved, then such accused person is found not guilty of that particular crime and will be ordered to kept in psychiatric hospital for treatment or any other suitable places of custody, but he will not be sent to jail. So more points to remember is the law is beautiful enough. The law presumes that every person is sane and responsible for his action. This sentence I have made it earlier only. I have told you the law presumes that every person is sane until the contrary is proved, and he will be responsible for his action. So the burden to prove that the accused is mentally ill rests on the defense counsel. The defense has to prove that the accused is mentally ill. And the law also presumes that every criminal act there should be a criminal intent or a mind. Without the criminal mind there cannot be a criminal act. This is what the law presumes. That is, for any act to be considered criminal, two conditions have to be satisfied. That is mens rea and actus rea. Mens rea is nothing but the guilty state of mind or the criminal state of mind. Mens equals mind and rea means criminal. So the criminal mind is nothing but mens rea. And actus rea. The actus rea means the actual forbidden physical act which results in death. That is a criminal act or the guilty act. So the law presumes that every criminal act there should be a criminal mind. That is, without mens rea there cannot be an actus rea. That means to say, without the criminal intent or the criminal mind there cannot be a criminal act. This is what the law presumes. So then what are the tests to determine the criminal responsibility of a mentally ill person? The following are the tests. That is the McNaughton rule, also called as the right or the wrong test, also called as legal test. Then there is section 84 of the Indian Penal Code. Then there is Durham's rule, Carren's rule, the irresistible impulse test, the American Law Institute test, and the federal rule. The rules such as the Durham rule, the Carren's rule, the American Law Institute test are all from the other countries or the American rules, which will not be studied in this particular topic. We are only going to highlight about the McNaughton rule and the section 84 of the Indian Penal Code. Why we are considering these two, or why we are considering McNaughton rule, which is also not a rule that is applied in India, but will still we see why it is being considered in this particular topic. So we'll briefly know about the history of McNaughton rule. There was a McNaughton trial in the year 1843 in English courts, which laid down the following rules. Why these following rules were laid down? There is a history behind, once again behind that. That is, there was a person named Daniel McNaughton. He was 29 years old, Scotsman, and he was suffering from paranoid schizophrenia and had repeated attacks of delusion of persecution. That means he used to think always that there are certain spies sent by Catholic priests who are trying to kill him on the behest of Prime Minister Sir Robert Peel. So he had delusion of persecution that Prime Minister of the country, that is Sir Robert Peel, was under the influence of Catholic priests, are sending certain spies who are always following him and trying to kill him. Therefore, under that delusion of persecution, he decided to kill the Prime Minister of that particular country, Sir Robert Peel. But on one fine day, instead of killing Robert Peel, he killed his private secretary, that is Edmund Drummond. Edmund Drummond. So he was arrested and the trial was continued in the English courts. During the trial, Daniel Macnaghten admitted that he was driven by desperation of persecution, that is delusion of persecution, and thus had to kill the person, that is Mr. Edmund Drummond. There were 10 physicians who were 9 of them for the defense and one was for the prosecution side. All of the 10 physicians found him of unsoundness of mind and thus decided him or found him not guilty on the grounds of mental illness. So the 10 physicians examined Daniel Macnaghten, and 9 of the 10 physicians were for his side and one was for the prosecution. They found him to be suffering from mental illness and concluded that he was not guilty on the ground of mental illness. Based on this court's judgment, there was a public outcry. The public did not take it very easily, and that led Queen Victoria summon the House of Lords. So the House of Lords appointed 14 judges panel and they put forth 5 hypothetical questions to the 14 judges, and the 5 hypothetical questions that were answered by these 14 judges came to be known as Macnaghten rule. So the final Macnaghten rule, the answers given by those 14 judges to the 5 hypothetical questions posed to them came to be known as Macnaghten rule, also the right or wrong test or the legal test. From that, the important rule is as follows, that is, an accused person is not legally responsible if it is proved that at the time of committing the crime he was suffering from such a defect of reason, from abnormality of mind, that he did not know the nature and quality of the act he was doing, or that what he was doing was wrong. So this is an important rule, or it can be considered as one of the answers that was given by those 14 panel judges. So I will repeat it, that is the Macnaghten rule. An accused person is not legally responsible if it is proved that at the time of committing the crime he was suffering from such a defect of reason, from abnormality of mind, that he did not know the nature and quality of the act he was doing, or that what he was doing was wrong. So section 84 of the Indian Penal Code, based on that particular Macnaghten rule, in India the legal test has been accepted as law of criminal responsibility and is included in section 84 of the Indian Penal Code. So based on the Macnaghten rule, in India the legal test has been accepted as a law of criminal responsibility and is included in section 84 of the Indian Penal Code. Section 84 of the Indian Penal Code reads as, nothing is an offence which is done by a person who at the time of doing it, by reason of unsoundness of mind, is incapable of knowing the nature of the act, or that he is doing what is either wrong or contrary to the law. I'll read once again section 84 of the Indian Penal Code, that is, nothing is an offence which is done by a person who at the time of doing it, by reason of unsoundness of mind, is incapable of knowing the nature of the act, or that he is doing what is either wrong or contrary to the law. I'll explain that. So person or an offence that is committed is not an offence which is done by a person who at the time of doing it was not able to understand the nature of the act, or that he is doing what is either wrong. He did not know whether it is wrong or whether it is contrary to the law. Why? Because of the reason of unsoundness of mind. Because he was suffering from mentally ill, He did not understand the nature of the act. He did not know that it is wrong. He did not understand that it is contrary to the law, and hence it is considered as not an offense. This is the gist of section 84 of the Indian Penal Code. Examples I would like to quote. If due to delusion, due to mental illness, the person is suffering from mental illness and he has got delusion. So due to that delusion, he thinks that there is another person who is attempting to kill him, and thereby he kills that man in self-defense. Then if it is proved that delusion is due to mental illness and he has done that act during the period of mental illness, then he has no criminal responsibility for it. If due to delusion, due to unsoundness of mind, the person thinks that other person to be a wild animal like a tiger or a lion and kills that man, then also he has no criminal responsibility. But only thing that during the time of that particular act, it should be proved that he was suffering from mental illness. There is another clause or an example here which I have made it in bold line. If due to delusion, person thinks that another has caused bad reputation or defamed or has brought a bad reputation to his name and kills him because he wants to take a revenge, then such an act is a responsible act, or that person becomes responsible for the murder of that particular person, because under law no one can kill a person out of revenge or in revenge. Other examples where section 84 of the IPC can be applied is somnambulism. Somnambulism is nothing but sleepwalking. Person gets up in the night, walks aimlessly, or he does not know where he is going, but he does not injure himself. He may commit certain acts during the somnambulism period, and if such an act is considered to be contrary to the law, but it is proved that the person committed under the effect of such an act under the effect of somnambulism, then he is not held responsible for his act. Another example I can quote is delirium. A person will not be held responsible for his acts committed during the period of delirium. Person suffering from delirium, then any act committed during the period of delirium, person will not be held responsible for his acts. Similarly, drunkenness. Drunkenness, that is an act done by a person who is incapable of knowing the nature of the act due to intoxication, is not an offense if the thing that caused intoxication was administered to him without his knowledge or against his will. For example, if a person is not habituated or not in the habit of taking an alcoholic drink, but that alcoholic drink was administered to him without his knowledge or against his will, and under that intoxication of alcohol, if he does certain act, then such an act is not considered as an offense, because of the intoxication he is not able to know the nature of the act he was doing. But it should be proved that the thing, the drug or the alcohol that caused the intoxication should be administered without his knowledge or against his will. In such conditions only you can apply the section 84 of the Indian Penal Code. Thank you, students. This was the concluding part of the forensic psychiatry chapter. In today's class we discussed in brief about the civil responsibility of mentally ill person and criminal responsibility of mentally ill person. To refresh you, the civil responsibilities are with regards to management of the property and affairs, mental illness and contract, mental illness and marriage contract, competency of a mentally ill person to stand as a witness in court of law, consent and mental illness, and testamentary capacity and mental illness. In criminal responsibility, we discussed about the history of McNaughton rule, what is the definition of McNaughton rule, and also how, based on McNaughton rule, the section 84 of the Indian Penal Code was applied to test the criminal responsibility of a mentally ill person. So thank you students. Once again, submit the assignment before the scheduled period on Google Classroom itself. Thank you. Thank you.